Hi everyone, it's a ticket to Christ. Thank you for tuning back in. We are still in the Wisdom for These Days series. We're looking at wisdom for complex situations, and we're in 1 Kings chapter 3. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's going to be too long, but this was a chapter whereby Solomon was now going to reign in place of David as king. And the Lord appeared to Solomon and asked him, to ask for whatever you want. And Solomon asked for wisdom to lead the people. So because he asked for wisdom, God says, you didn't ask for long life, you didn't ask for riches, you didn't ask for the life of your enemies, but you asked for understanding to discern judgment. So he asked to have a discerning heart and to have the wisdom to govern, to rule the people, because he knew and realized it was a big task. So what he asked for wasn't self-focused. It was people-focused and, with the heart of other people in mind. And so God was pleased with his heart and granted him not only that heart, but also everything else. God says, not only am I going to give you wisdom and understanding, there's not going to be anyone who will ever live who will be like you, Solomon. And you're going to also get riches and honor, because what you asked for pleased me so. And so we see here the first installment of the wisdom that Solomon operated under. It wasn't a wisdom that came from him. It was a wisdom that came from God. And so in verse 16, in 1 Kings chapter 3, we see here, then came there 2 women that were harlots unto the king and stood before him. And the one woman said, O my Lord, I and this woman dwell in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house. And it came to pass the 3rd day after that I was delivered, and this woman was delivered also, and we were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, save we 2 in the house. And this woman's child died in the night because she overlain it. And she arose at midnight and took my son from beside me, and while thine handmaid slept, and laid it in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. And when I rose in the morning to give my child suck, behold, it was dead. And when I had considered it in the morning, behold, it was not my son which I did bear. And the other woman said, Nay, but the living is my son, and the dead is thy son. And this said, No, but the dead is thy son, and the living is my son. Thus spake thee before the king. Then saith the king, the one saith, This is my son that liveth, and thy son is dead. And the other saith, Nay, but thy son is the dead, and my son is the living. And the king said, Bring me a sword. And they brought a sword before the king. And the king said, Divide the living child in 2, and give half to the one and half to the other. Then spake the woman whose the living child was unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son. And she said, O my lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. But the other said, Let it be neither mine nor thine, but divide it. Then the king answered and said, Give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. She is the mother thereof. And all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had judged, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do judgment. And so what is it that is jumping out at you from this? There's just so much to learn from this. I just think that when you're walking with God, when you're pleasing God and you're aligned with his will and his character, and you're seeking after his wisdom, you will have supernatural wisdom beyond your own natural intellect and capacity. I believe Solomon was still very young at this point and was able to rule. So what happened here, there were these 2 women, two harlot. A harlot, I guess, is another name for a prostitute. I don't know if it's prostitution like we know it or if it's a different thing, but it says harlot, so we're going to just take it for that. They both had a child. One of them accidentally killed her child in the middle of the night. She slept and she accidentally crushed her child, laid on the child, and the child suffocated her own child by accident. And so in the middle of the night, she took her dead child, gave it to this other woman who had also had a child at the same time, and took the other woman's living child and pretended it was her child. So this other woman did a wicked thing. But so when the other woman woke up, she thought her son died. But when she looked at it in the clear light of day, she realized, wait a minute, this is not my son. That's my son. This woman has my son. And so they brought it before the king. Now, nobody witnessed it but those two women. So it was one woman's word against the other. And they were both harlots. So it's not to say one was in a better position than the other. And so it was the type of situation where it would be impossible to know. It's one of those complex situations whereby nobody witnessed it. Both these women have issues. It could be either or, and you don't know who to believe. And so Solomon had to give just the right answer, which he did. So by saying, let me cut the living child in two, it exposed who the right mother was, because the right mother couldn't bear to see her son killed. She says, no, give it to her, just don't kill him. And Solomon saw that had to be the mother, because only a mother's heart could be moved with such compassion. The other woman, whose heart was so callous that she couldn't even mourn her own dead son, she tried to steal somebody else's son, didn't have the heart of a true mother. First of all, to be that careless that she's lying and crushes her own child to death, and now wants to take somebody else's son. Because sons in those days were extra valuable, because it meant that you had somebody who could rise up in your household and protect you from war, defend you, and go out and make a living. So, that's why she was going after this other woman's son. And we see this, the wisdom that Solomon had came completely from God. It couldn't have come from his own wisdom, because he didn't have that in himself. And we saw earlier in the same chapter that he prayed for it and God had given it to him. We see Jesus demonstrating that same wisdom. I think it's John. Is it John chapter 8 with the situation where this woman who was caught in adultery was brought before him, and Jesus told them, he is without sin, cast the first stone. Again, Jesus, being God's son, demonstrated that wisdom from God that is just so sharp and so precise. And similarly, if you're going through a really complex situation whereby things are very tricky, you can take one wrong step and it's a tinderbox, or, there are just so many consequences to the decision, or there's so many different layers to it, or so many things that could happen as a result of it. You need that type of supernatural wisdom that comes from the Father, that comes from God, and that comes from having a close relationship with God and really seeking after his heart and bringing it to him with all your heart surrendered, so that God can provide you with the right answer for that type of situation. And there's so many things can happen, whether it be on your job, when you're dealing with work issues, people, personalities, or it could be a family situation, dealing with in-laws or children. It could be, just legal things. It could be in your role as a leader, a church leader, or a group leader, or, just your role as a ministry person, whereby you're responsible for, whatever decisions and situations you find yourself in. And, this is not the time to lean on our own understanding. When the more complex the situation is, the greater the opportunity to bring glory to God through it. Because except through God, I wouldn't have been able to figure this out, except through God, And then also that's where timing comes in. That's where sitting on it can come in. And sometimes you're in a very complex situation and you need to make quick decisions. But if it's very, very complex, you don't want to act in haste because the consequences can be worse. So the more complex the situation is, the more you need to say, okay, you know what, I need to take some time, maybe 3 days. If it's very urgent, give me 3 days at minimum, or give me 24 hours to pray and fast, or however you need to do it. But just making sure that whatever revelation you have, it's in alignment with God's character, it's in alignment with his will, and through it, you're seeing the righteousness of God being played forth. James as well talks about wisdom from above, that it is first of all pure, peaceable, it's impartial, it bears good fruit. So you want to look at the fruits of it. What is it what type of fruit will it bring forth? How does this play itself out to the glory of God? Where is God in this? Where is godliness in this? And sticking in alignment with what you see God to be and how God shows himself up. Through the scriptures, through revelation, through how he moves in your life, through how he speaks to your heart, and through what you see when you look at Jesus. So that's what I see from this. I hope it ministered to you and blessed you. If you're going through a really complicated situation and you're uncertain how to approach it. God bless you, beloved. Hope you're having a great day and week. Take care.